This is The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of. I'm writer-collector Ryan Condal.
And I'm writer-collector Dave Mandel. And The Stuff That Dreams Are Made Of is brought to you by Heritage Auctions. This is our new beginning that we've decided we're going to do. But brought to you by Heritage Auctions. Thank you, Heritage. Again, Heritage Auctions, when you've got a lot of money in your pocket and you want to give it to somebody, Heritage Auctions, because they haven't given us any kind of... they haven't really given us any kind of motto or tagline or anything, but that's where I send my money these days. So yeah,
yes, it is.
Still paying off my winnings from the Greg Jean auction. Yeah. So help them out so that they forget I owe them something.
There you go.
Heritage Auctions. Yeah. How are you, Ryan?
I'm very good. I'm admittedly very excited about tonight. We have this is a special episode of The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of. This is somebody that I've been excited to talk to since we made this stupid podcast, and I've now been working with him for 2 seasons and like 3.5 years because it takes so long to make this show. But we have this great, amazing special effects.
Yeah, normally I was just gonna say normally we start with what's new in props, but what's new in props is this guest that he is what's new. There you go. Right.
Yeah. And it says, welcome on Mike
prop.
Dawson.
Yeah. A living prop.
A living prop. Hello. Yes, exactly.
Hello. Or all props to you.
You have a living prop.
Yeah. If we could collect him, we would put him in Lucite.
Hi.
But no, it's great to have you, Mike. And yeah, so we've worked together now since kind of 2020. Yeah. Thank you for taking the time. We're just, you've had this, we're telling you offline, and I went through your CV earlier today, because I was doing a sort of discussion guide for this, and I sent it to Dave, and I was like, this is insane. It's like a list of our favorite movies from like the late 70s through the early 90s. And then you continue on from there, and you work on, big television projects now, like House of the Dragon. So really what we wanted to do tonight is
I've kind of moved over now.
Well, the whole industry, in a way, the whole industry has. I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, it seems like once upon a time, TV was slumming, and now it's where people are at, I guess.
Nobody wanted to do it.
It's a big change, but
it is.
Yeah. But we're doing huge things on it now,
No, we're doing TV with movie quality, whatever movie quality is. But you know what I mean? It's like in the old days on a TV show.
Totally.
Yeah, the effects on a TV show would be, nothing, But yeah,
I think in a way it's harder to do it to do a TV
to do television.
People like talk about TV. Well, to do TV, they and people would always disregard it and say, "Oh, it's just TV," but for me, it's almost like doing a 10-hour movie, and it's like, it's vast. So it's not just like an easy thing that you can just pick up and like the old Avengers and things not like the Avengers they used to have on TV in England. It's not like that anymore. It's like you say, it's high definition, high expectation, and it's not just an easy thing to do. Anyway, so I interrupted you.
No, Mike, I was just going to say, you just made a lot of idiot young Americans really excited. Like, there's an old Avengers show about the Avengers, about Captain America? Because they don't know the Avengers show. So, yeah.
They might have seen the movie in the 90s. But which you worked on, didn't you, Mike? Did you work on that movie?
It's awful. Don't talk to me about that one. I do remember that one.
Very good. So we should just talk about to start. We kind of want to talk about your career, what you do, and then talk about House of the Dragon, because everybody there's a segment of our audience that's going to want to come on and hear tidbits about that. But then we wanted to just kind of do a retrospective through your classic career and the films that you and I have talked about a bunch on set, and you've told me stories from, and just hear your experience of working on them, and also how telling the story over time of how the technology has evolved and what you do, your specialty, and how it's become, so intertwined with the visual effects world, whereas it used to be, special effects were the visual effects, and now those two things, the practical effects intertwine with the digital effects and things like that. But I mean, just on the most basic level, you have this company called Fizz Bang Wallop. You have amazing ball caps, which I was lucky to get one right at the end of wrap, which I love. What is, because I think people transpose the terms special effects and visual effects, but they're two very different things. So what is, in your words, special effects?
I think that special effects are effects that you see in camera, that we do in camera on the day. So we're live special effects basically. So whereas visual effects are they supplement it, or they purely create it, and we don't have anything to do with it at all. But from my point of view, if anyone says to me, well, what's the difference? I say all our stuff is in camera on the day, so that the actors can actually see it or act with it, and the directors can direct it. Whereas visual effects, they tell, the director will tell him what they want, and you get it a few months later in post, and that's a difference. There is an amalgam now when we come together, like with the element shoot that we did at the end of Dragons, which was quite huge, where we shoot elements and then they merge those so that we do have an input in there. And that's getting big. I think that's getting bigger, but that simplistically, it is in camera.
Yeah. And that's things like, I just wrote down very quickly: fire, smoke, rain, snow, ash, dragonfire, right? Gimbals, anything, when we have our royal wheelhouse, that we still shoot in the sort of the way you would have done on like Wagon Train back in the day. You'd have an exterior sort of stagecoach set that thunders by in the camera, and then you cut into the little set that's on the stage. And I always say the grip with the cigarette hanging out of his mouth is stepping on the little lever to make the thing rock and waving the light by the window and all that. But the gimbal that it sits on, I mean, that's something that you guys have to, right? You have to engineer, design, fashion, and then actually make in your shop. And sometimes those things are fairly simple, and then sometimes they're crazy complex.
I was going to ask you, do you also make like the fake horses? Do you make the fake horses when is that under your purview? Like when like there's for a riding on a not real horse, are you responsible for the horse part, I guess, for lack of a better word, even if the head is mounted on is that you?
We've made a completely mechanical horse which gallops, which they can sit, and we can mount that on front of a camera tracking vehicle, like a Silverado, and drive along a field or strip or road or anything like that, which we use a lot on Dragons. And we also made some rigid horses that people sit on, and we fire them down tracks, and then at a specific moment they can either fly to the side, or they fly over the top of each other, and they can crash, because obviously you don't want to hurt real horses in any way. So we've done that. So we have basically two types of effect there that we did, along with stunts, obviously, because Rowley would
and it's
ask that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's the fascinating thing about special effects is, I mean, all departments sort of intertwine, but special effects very specifically, it's so ingrained into how stunts works, health and safety. Sometimes that's stunts and health and safety together. Visual effects are the departments fold over on each other. Sometimes it's armory with weapons, where practical weapons end and you guys begin, if you're making a specialty thing or if you need a specialty gag. The mechanical horse blew me away this year. It's incredible the way it worked, because you hear it and you're like, oh, is this gonna look right? And then when you actually see it on camera, it's really amazing. And the thing that fascinated me was there's an under musculature. So it's got like this, I don't know, silicone skin or whatever that sits over this musculature. So when the horse is chugging along, you actually see the muscles flexing under,
wow.
and you're only shooting it, at cowboy size, this size, just for actor safety, because anything wider would be a real horse with a stunt actor on it that you're doing face replacement, or they're wearing a helmet so you can't tell or whatever. But that part just blew me away. And it's so realistic. And it was just, we as an industry have really struggled to bridge that gap from the old days when you could do a lot more with horses without people looming over your shoulder. And look, they're looming rightfully so. And also just back in a day when actors were both allowed to and could ride horses much more than they can, they can today. Back in the old Westerns, just Clint Eastwood rode a horse. I mean, he just did, and he had to learn how to do it to do his job, and he had to learn how to do it well. And that's just not the case anymore. And nor would he be allowed to. I mean, you're not even allowed with an actor who can ride to go over certain sort of speed or whatever canter with the horse just for safety reasons. So these innovations are needed.
Yeah, we built that horse to have plates under the skin so that when it moved, the plates flexed, which gave you that kind of muscle movement in through the latex, and then obviously the fur on top. So I thought it looked really good, but the neck moves as well. So we took it to a different level, I think.
Yes, very impressive. To be seen very soon, coming to you on that
Do
episode
you
of House of
guys,
Dragon.
I know the dragons for the most part are CGI, but are there pieces of real dragon? I don't know what I'm asking. Do you know what I mean? Like, is there a real dragon head or a claw or anything? Are there parts that you augment? Do you know what I mean? Like that you work with both, or is that all CGI? I honestly don't know.
I mean, the nearest thing that we would do with a real dragon would be a footprint of a dragon, not necessarily a foot, but like the head. We'd make the area of a head like a flat, and we would push it down onto a bush or something like that, so that it looks like he's putting his head down onto a bush. I mean, then we'd have big like wind like blowers, so it would breathe. He'd be breathing out of his nose, and it would blow the bushes for real. That kind of stuff we would do. And obviously the rest of it would be completely CG, really, from our point of view. Or when he's sitting, obviously, on the buck or bucks, because we've made several on this thing, like a high tech, medium tech, and then low tech. We've made quite a few on this one. So that would be when we would get into that kind of stuff. But apart from that, it's purely, and obviously when he's breathing fire, that was the biggest thing that we did that was real. But obviously there was no dragon there at the time. It's just our guys in no mech suits.
With a flamethrower.
Big flamethrower this year.
Yes, very, very, very large flamethrowers. Yes. Was the main dragon buck, was that the most complex thing that you built for the show? If not this year, then so far?
Yeah, the 3-axis, the one that we used on B stage would be the most definitely the most sophisticated one that we built. And we modified it slightly from season 1, where we gave it some lateral movement as well, and we upgraded the rotate, and we obviously worked a lot on the wind and all that kind of stuff that was part of because it has to move with the show, with the buck as it moves around. And last year we had quite clunky stuff, and this year we've refined that, and we've gone high tech air movers and things like that are really small but very powerful. And obviously, because we are limited to like 300 kilos on there as a workload, because of the speed that we are trying to achieve with the dragon turning, we can't. The weight limit was 300 kilos, so we had to keep it really kind of low. And but it worked. It worked really well. I'm very, very happy with it. I don't think I can improve it now, unless you let me build a better one next year.
Yeah, it was incredible this year, and it felt massively improved to me, just watching from the outside this year, and all the little things that you guys tweaked, and even little things that I noticed where there seemed to be more kind of for lack of a better word, sort of like wing flex built into the way that it moves. So you're actually, it's like remembering that the character is sitting on a living animal that's flapping these giant wings. So you get this sense of sort of, I don't know, boat, sea motion for, for the rider, even in sort of non kind of quote unquote actiony, moments. And it's just, it all makes it feel so authentic. We upgraded the camera that there's a robotic arm now that follows the buck.
Ryan, sorry, I just want to if either of you can tell me, because I'm not I obviously it's sort of for when the rider is sitting on it, right?
Yeah, correct.
On the dragon. How much exists? Like, where is it? Is it how much? Like, I'm trying to get. I mean, obviously, we can put a picture up because I'm curious. Like, what exists from where to where? If I'm thinking about a dragon, do you know what I'm kind of asking? Like how much is actually physically built?
It's basically the saddle and then a bit of surface area around the saddle that's blue or whatever for visual effects, and then integrate into where they sit on the dragon. Because in our show thus far, all of the dragons who are ridden have saddles on them because they're domesticated dragons, which actually makes it easier because it gives something for the rider to interact with. And this is another place where Mike interacts and folds over with another department, because that's specialty props are building those saddles through the set deck department, but they're doing it in concert with Mike to make it have to actually function like a real saddle, sit on this buck, be comfortable for the actor.
And the saddle is moving to reflect that there are wings to the side of the saddle. And
correct.
Whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, the saddle sits sort of between the shoulder blades because these things are so huge. So the saddle is
you
more
kind of ride
like
forward, I guess.
Yes,
you ride towards the neck or the head,
right at the base of the neck of the dragon. But it's more of the dragon moving beneath the saddle versus the saddle flexing itself with if that makes sense. So it's showing the rider kind of rising and falling.
Gotcha.
And but there are these, we built reins into them. There are multiple handle points. There's saddles and luggage on all of these things, and they're all exquisitely designed because they're
beautiful.
made. There are only a handful of these in the world, and they're made for very rich people who ride dragons. So they're beautiful, and they're ornate and
do
gorgeous.
the saddles reflect as well? Like, forgive me, like Valerian, I don't know, whatever, like runes or like is there a Valerian element to the saddle in any way, shape, or form, or is it more just?
Less so, because that would have been hundreds of years in the past. So it's more.
So these are not 100-year-old saddles. These are newer saddles, but just made for the wealthy.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
like old dragons, and kind of as the dragons grow, the saddles sort of fall into disuse or maybe taken off or just replaced, and they use the understructure and they put a new saddle on it. And we tell some of those stories as you go along. Some of the older dragons, it seems like they've kind of patchworked, just adding to and trying new rigging to keep the saddle alive as the back of this thing spreads and grows. And those are all kind of practical elements that Mike has to work with to try to, what we're all trying to do is collaborate to make the experience of watching a person riding a dragon feel as real as possible. And there's so much of it in the show, particularly now in season 2, and there will be more, much more to come, that it's really I mean, in many ways, it's the most fun part in the show, but it's also the most critical in terms of immersing people into this world, because so much of our show is practical. Our amazing sets, our amazing locations, the costumes, the props, all those things are actually in camera, all the work that Mike does. But the dragons are this amalgam of all these different worlds that end with a big digital dragon, and you damn well better sell that as believable as everything else in the show. Otherwise, you're not going to suspend disbelief. So it's a big it's a big old meatball.
I think on this one also the difference between this season 2 and season 1 there's more like more fights on dragons. So the movements are far more rapid and steep climbs, steep dives, and all that kind of stuff. And you've got the actors sitting on these automated motion bases basically, and they've got to they have to feel comfortable to do that. And at the same time, this thing is swinging them around like horrendously fast and up and down and all that. But they seem to take it in their stride. I think some of them quite enjoy it, really, to be true with it. But so that's
They
that's a difference between season
they
this
love
season.
it. Yeah, we joked internally that we were going to just start charging 100 quid a ride for people to go up and just start trying to pay down our visual effects budget by just putting crew and just kind of anybody that's walking around. Warner Brothers Studios leaves and just go up and get a dragon
Well,
ride.
I feel like at the eventual House of the Dragon, like amusement park or world that'll happen like in 10 years, won't that'll be a pretty great place to like get your picture taken for like $30
sure.
and have the kid ride a dragon or kind of thing,
For
right?
sure.
That's coming eventually, right? Yeah.
Next door, next to Harry Potter.
Yes, exactly. Right next door to Harry Potter. There's so much of what you guys are talking about with the believability. You have to believe, right? If you don't believe the dragon is the dragon, the whole thing sort of falls apart. And it sort of makes me think of You'll Believe a Man Can Fly. And if I'm reading this correctly, Mike, Superman is your first credit, or at least the first one you'll admit to.
No, it was my first credit.
It was. Okay. So, I want to talk all about Superman, but I also want to ask you, my sense of the British film community is often that like, sometimes it's a family business. Was that the case for you? How did you get into the industry? And then tell us about Superman, or how did you end up on the Superman set? Yeah.
Well, it was made. I worked at Shepperton Studios on Superman 1. My father was. It's very. There's nepotism rule. Used to, not so much now actually, but it used to rule the English film industry, and basically they had this ridiculous system where you couldn't work in the film industry unless you belonged to the union, and you couldn't join a union unless you had a job. So it was a catch-22. So you just actually couldn't get into it unless somebody would sign your proposal before you actually started. So basically, you needed your dad or your mum or your uncle to sign these things to get your foot into the door. And I remember my dad came home one night and I was working in a restaurant. Actually, I left school and wanted to be a chef. And then I fell out of love with that because at the time there was no superstar chef, so it was all pretty awful. And he came home and he's like, "Why don't you come and work on Superman with me?" Derek, who this guy called Derek Botel, who was the most lovely man, and he said he needs some people to help him fly Superman. He came from a company called Eugene's Flying Circus, which they used to fly people in circuses, really. So basically, he devised a system of pulling people along wires and stuff like that. So I just said, yeah, sure. So I went there, £40 a week I earned, which I thought was a huge amount of money, and for that I would pull Superman along at night. Basically, so they'd rehearse it all. So in H stage at Shepperton, which is still there because I was there the other day. Not the set. It was all the ice cabin, and Marlon Brando was there doing his bits, and it was like amazing. And I was only a kid, and I was like walking around thinking, oh, I'm not sure if I like this, because I had no self-confidence at that time. I was like, I hate, my dad was working with on another bit, where the spaceship actually broke through all the crystals and came out to send him off. He was doing that shot.
Oh, where it smashes, yep, on Krypton.
He was doing that shot. He was doing the Krypton shot. So I was just stuck there on my own, pulling ropes, really. And I did that for a little while. And that was me. That was my first entry into. I didn't have a car. I used to catch a bus to work and everything like that. It's like crazy, really. But yes, so that's how I got into the industry. My dad made me. And then you catch the bug and you can't do anything else, Curse, really. But there you go. Look at me now, flying dragons.
Yeah, exactly. You're just, as long as it's flying, it's all good. When you started on Superman, had they already gotten the kinks out of the flying, or were you a part of, the sort of, like, were they still figuring it out? I guess was my question. Like, was it up and running pretty perfectly, or was it a work in progress?
It was basically a really crude system, really, where it was just a track laid a track in the seat in the roof with Wally Vivas, who's an old effects guy, designed this V roller, which is basically a encapsulated roller, and they would put piano wire from those down to their harnesses, and they would just fly them that way, just pull them along. And so if you ever watch them go around the corner, they always swing out and then come back in, because they're basically just pendulums, really. They're not like on now they would put you on a pole arm, or they would put you on a Kuka arm or something like that, and which is basically what we put the camera on the new camera system for the Buck on season 2. But you can actually put people on those now. But it was very crude, but super effective, but and also time consuming, because it took a plethora of people to actually pull, say, 6 people along, because it was like the baddies were following Superman around through the ice cavern, and it was all that kind of stuff. So I would say that it was, for its time, it's held up, isn't it? Really, if you look at it, it's great, and I think it's endearing, the fact that they do go around the corner nice and smooth. It's not like too digital,
I find it incredibly smooth. To me, when I watch that movie, it is obviously whatever 1970 whatever, but it doesn't feel dated, and a big part of it is the flying. I mean, it really doesn't, which is good pulling, I guess is what I'm saying to you. You did an excellent job pulling.
Good.
So then, Mike, I don't know whether this was your next credits. The next thing I wrote down, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean,
well, you missed out Dracula.
You missed out Dracula with
John.
Yeah, well, how was that?
No, that was terrible. I know it was. That was in H-stage as well. We were in H-stage.
Were you
John Badham? That John Badham one. I was like cursed with that shit.
Yeah.
And I was only a kid. And I was on a wave machine, and we were doing the meter when it came in, and I was doing waves and stuff like that. And I was a kid, and I got in my boat to row myself to shore, and all the divers came along and sunk my boat as fun, because they thought it was really fun to do that to a kid. And I had to drive home with a soggy duffel coat on, and it was awful. But let's move on to Raiders, because that's when my career actually started to pick up a bit.
By the time Superman ended, did you have the bug? Like, did you know, like, I love this, I like this, I think could be my thing? Or was it more gradual over the first couple of movies you worked on, where you started to realize, I'm comfortable, I like this, I want to do it?
I started to actually fall in love with it when we did Raiders, I think, because up until then, I mean, Superman, I was just pulling a rope, basically. North Sea Hijack was rubbish, and Dracula I was just doing a wave machine. When you started to do Raiders, I was actually starting to get into work. I went back to work with my dad, who was doing he was a floor workshop supervisor for Kit West, who was an amazing supervisor, and I started to actually feel part of a team, an actual a team of people that I wanted to stay with. And so on that, I was more on the floor as well. So I was on, like, doing when we were doing all the rolling balls and the arrows, the darts coming out and all that. So that was all real. And it was much more part of that team. And when we went over to Tunisia to do the fight scene, because I know on Lonnie was fascinated by the fact that when we were doing the fight scene in front of the aeroplane that was going around, that they were actually the props were painted on perspex discs. He just couldn't get over that, that we did that, and I actually I saw it. We did a show at Warner's, and I actually went to see it, and
it works. I didn't know that,
and I was like, I'd forgotten how actually good it was, and it brought so many memories back, because I haven't seen that film for ages, and to watch it and you don't appreciate what you've done until you actually see it with people that actually do appreciate it more than you know. And I don't mean, I'm not disrespecting anything in any way, but it's like you kind of worked on something and you kind of forget it, and then you go back to it and you see that it's still right now, it's still giving enjoyment to so many people, and it still looks bloody good. You know, that fight sequence when the props were coming towards him, you wouldn't know that that wasn't real. You wouldn't, you know. And everyone was thinking, what? How did they think that up? And I'm like, you know what? I think Kit West thought that up actually, and it was a great sequence. And the pilot in there was what's his name? Not Kathleen Kennedy's husband, used to be a husband.
Frank Marshall.
Yeah, Frank Marshall. That was Frank Marshall in the plane.
Frank Marshall.
Yeah.
Did you get to? Because he always seems like when I see footage from the making of Raiders, Steven Spielberg just seems like he's sort of everywhere and involved in everything. Did you get to kind of, I don't know, did you ever get to interact with him a little bit on that film? Because I don't know, he just seems like the kind of guy that would, what are you doing? Let's do this. I don't know.
He was at that particular moment in his career, he was far more accessible than he is now. I think he was less cocooned. And he was young, and he was like full of, you know, vigor. Well, I'm not saying he hasn't got vigor now, but he was much more like, it was much more of a young team, you know. And he would come in every day and put his storyboards on a big wall, and that would be his shoots to the day. And as he shot the shot, he would just rip them off, and work his way through it. And we were all part of it. We felt much more of it, because we didn't regard him as a superstar then. You know, it wasn't. It was early days for him really, and it was much more of a family thing. But it was great. I really enjoyed it. I remember he got us all a Sony Walkman each, because they'd just come out. And he shipped them over from the States and got everyone a Sony Walkman, which was like, wow, you know,
wow,
that's crazy, you know. But now, when I did Munich for him, he would shoot Munich, and then a boat would come and put him onto Getty's yacht, and he would go out to sea, and that would be him. He'd spend the night at sea, and then we'd come back. So he's like so not approachable now. Do you know what I mean? So it's different.
So at this point, I mean,
hold on, I'm sorry, really quickly. When Ryan is shooting House of the Dragon, where is his yacht? When does he go to the yacht? I'm just curious. When does his yacht come?
I think he's got a land yacht, which is like a caravan. Or like a little Airstream,
very fancy land yacht. Yeah.
No, they can't find me on that show because I'm always in their workshops while they're actually working on set, just rummaging through their stuff, looking for things. But Mike, as you know, as you're moving along in your career, I mean, in Superman, you're pulling a rope. Presumably in Raiders, you have 3 or 4 films under your belt. You're doing more stuff as you're going along, and I think you're also probably seeing the technology must be growing at this like exponential rate as we get into the kind of key era of genre filmmaking, and we have to figure out these things in order to pull off bigger and bigger gags for the blockbuster era. Do you sense that stuff going on, or do you kind of now see it looking back?
Well, if we flip back to Raiders, I mean that was amazing. The end sequence to Raiders, when that happened, I remember the guys coming in from ILM and setting that up with the big VistaVision cameras, and they were chaining them to the ground because they were so had to be so locked off, and they would put big flash bulbs, these long burn flash bulbs on people's chests, front and back, so they'd wear it like a little harness, and a flash bulb on the front and a flash bulb on the back. And at the time, I was thinking, what the hell is that for? What are you doing? And then he would open the thing, and he was like, "Oh my God, it's beautiful, and then on all that kind of stuff, and everyone would pretend, and we had no idea what was going on. And then when we saw what they'd done, was it Richard Edlund? No, it might have been Richard Edlund. I'm not sure. I think it might have been. when we saw it at the end, it was like it just blew us away because it was early days of that spectacle, you know, of same with Star Wars. We used to see signs in. I used to see little triangles in Shepperton saying Star Wars, and I had no idea what it was about. You know, we'd see these little signs, and because they did it kind of really low profile, and we had no idea what it was going back. And obviously that first shot when you go to see Star Wars and the destroyer comes across the screen, it was like, wow, what is this? You know, and that's when everybody said it was the end of special effects and the beginning of visual effects, and it was the death knell of us, of our industry, obviously. But it wasn't. But at the time, everyone believed it was. They really did. You know.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I would, because it was still practical. I would think that fear came later with computers, but it's interesting to hear that was the reaction. That was the reaction then.
Yeah, it was definitely.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you've been in this industry a while now. So have you experienced people going, well, that's it, that's the end of special effects, like at this point, like 6 different times, like every 5 years, somebody's like, well, that's it, that's the end of special effects?
Yeah, that you do get it now and again. I mean, you do get people saying, well, it's getting so advanced now, they don't need us anymore, and it feels, sometimes it does feel like it, like it's like what you do. Like at the end of this, I had well, it was about 3/4 of the way through season 2. Somebody called me up for a job and said, "Oh, it's not. It's this is quite a, you know, it's a complicated show. It's not just flame and smoke." And I thought, you, how dare you say that to me? Do you know what I mean? Because this show is not. It was The Witcher as well, and
Right.
I think. Well, I'm not being big-headed, but I think we blow The Witcher out the water, really.
Wow.
And to say that to an effects guy, to say, oh, we're a bit more complicated than House of the Dragon. I thought you saucy cow. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go. I'm not interested. Thank you very much. Off you go.
Title of the episode.
So people do say that it's the end of special effects, but it's not. It's not, because there's always, because directors and artists, they want to act with stuff. You know, they don't want to act on their own. They don't. It's really difficult to pretend there's a dragon there as it is. But if you're sitting on a buck and there's wind blowing in it and there's rain and there's atmos and all that kind of shit is going on, you get a much better thing out of the person than that. We could actually not even have, Ryan, to correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't even need to put them on a saddle, really. You could probably do it all digital if you wanted to, but it's so much better if you don't, you know. So I think we're for my I'm lucky that my career, I've got enough left in me, I think, just to get to the end of it, to be truthful with you.
Oh, Mike, we have so many years of the show in front of us.
So many.
But I mean, I think you would have to, at the very least, give they would need reins and handles and things like that. But the rest of it, you could probably, you know, like to your point, you could get away with, you know, them sitting on a blue shape and doing it in post. But that's the fun thing about, and I think the thing that makes our show feel as tactile as it gets for people riding, what are obviously always going to be these imaginary giant digital beasts. We do get that level of practicality, which is the kind of thing that you've been doing, you know, since Superman, the beginning of your career. So,
I want to follow up on one other thing. Sorry, really quick, and I want to go back into other stuff. But so, Mike, these days, and not speaking about House of the Dragon, but really talking about just the industry in general, are there times where you're working maybe with a younger director who, you know, wants the latest technology and wants, you know, digital this and CGI that, where you have to say sometimes, hey, it would just be so much easier if I just do it. It will be better for the actors. Have you been in that situation where you've had to, I think, not just fight for your job, but fight for like the tactic, you know, let's be able to touch it. Let's feel it. Let's let it drip or whatever it is.
I think a lot of the younger directors actually want to do it real.
Oh, interesting.
I think a lot of the younger actors want to do it real, and I believe also that visual effects now we've kind of got to this equilibrium, and I think visual effects will often say this is much better if we do this real, and then we'll do that, we'll do the background, or let's do this, you know, and you do that. We can sort, especially the last two seasons. I mean, on this season it was amazing. I think we had an amazing rapport with visual effects. They were great with us, and season one. But see, this season was like bigger, and we sat with them a lot of the times, and we would work out the shots, and like, we'll do this, you do that, and that, and we'll do this, and this, and it really worked exceptionally well. And I think directors, I think, are finding that they're tuning into this equilibrium as well, you know, and some of I mean, like Tim Burton would always want to do it for real, always want to do it for real. And, you know, Guillermo would always want to do Hellboy, or anything. His animatronic stuff, mind blowing, you know, the stuff that he could do, the stuff that he wants to do. And I think there's an element of people not, you can just tell you can tell the difference if you actually take time to look. Or you want to go disposable, what I call disposable effects, where they're to a penny, and they become overkill, and you get like the transformery kind of things where it's just like so many going on, and it just becomes a tad boring, you know.
Yeah, over-egged, as I've learned to say.
Over-egged?
Totally.
Over-egged. Okay, I'm going to start over-egged. Okay, I got that.
No one will understand what you're talking about if you use that out there.
We're gonna make it big here in America.
Make it big.
Over-egged. I'm gonna start. Yeah, I'm gonna bring it to the U.S. cruise. Yeah.
Okay.
After Raiders, but starting with Raiders, you go on a run, and it's insane. Just looking at words like Raiders, Return of the Jedi, Temple of Doom. I mean, you were really just in that insane sort of
in that world,
sweet spot of mine and Ryan's dreams. I mean, did you know? I mean, I guess two things going on. Number one, did you realize at that moment, like, I am working on the best of the best? Like, did you know as it was happening?
No. I mean, most of these things that you're talking about, which are the great films that you say I worked on, they were all done at Elstree. And I was lucky enough to work for Kit West and George Gibbs, and they were basically based at Elstree, and they would come in and crew up, and they kind of like took crews that were there, and that was my studio. Like, you had the Pinewood Studios, the crew, the special effects guys that worked at Pinewood, and they would do predominantly the Bonds, and they made all the Bonds at Pinewood, you know. And there was no Leavesden. I think the first thing I ever made at Leavesden was Sleepy Hollow, and when we went into Leavesden to make Sleepy Hollow, it was a war zone. It was basically a rundown hangar. Basically, it was hideous, and it was falling apart. It was leaky. It was a shithole, really, and we just made it there. And then the Warners decided, if we spend X millions on this, we can make this into the best studio in England, and they did that. But at that time, it was crazily shit. And at the bottom of the runway where we were based, Ryan, on season 2, that's where we built the windmill at the end that blew up at the end of Sleepy Hollow. That was there, you know, and in the big stages we had all the where they did all the horsemen would run around and chase them up. That was basically an L stage. So it was great. It wasn't the studio it is now, but until that point, a lot of my early days were all at Elstree, and that's where they made all that kind of stuff, because Star Wars and all that, on all those things. So they made Roger Rabbit there. All the indies were made there. It was all that kind of stuff. All the Star Wars were made there.
Well, so speaking of Star Wars, Mike, you told me I think there are many Mike Dawson stories that I love. I think my personal favorite was from your time on Empire Strikes Back. And if you're willing, I understand, but I think plenty of time has passed, and whatever. But can you please tell your Sir Alec Guinness story?
Well, Alex Guinness, Obi-Wan Kenobi at the time, who was my idol and he was my idol. And I thought, oh my God, he's. I mean, I never thought he wanted to do the part. I don't think his heart was in it. But anyway, I was only a kid, and my job was he was talking to Yoda, and he was sitting there by a log, and he was meant to be like all shimmery, and my job was just to be a little bit of smoke in the foreground and just wafting it in gently as he was speaking to Yoda, and all of a sudden he just stopped, and in his very, very theatrical, unique voice, he said, "He's putting me off." And he kind of pointed over to my direction, and I thought, well, how rude is that? So I've looked behind me, and there's no one behind me except a wall. And then I realised instantly that it was me that was putting him off. And so the first AD came over, and he said, "I'm sorry, Bunt," because he used to call me Bunty. He said, "I'm sorry, Bunt, you're gonna have to wait outside, mate, till lunchtime." And I'm like, oh my God, could you imagine? It's like being sent to the headmaster. And I was only a kid at the time, and he's like, "Yeah, go and wait outside till lunchtime, and don't take it too hard." And I walked off the set feeling like my heart had been ripped out, and I stood outside the stage door, which with the lights on, read, rehearsals, not daring to go back in, and then they all broke and came out for lunch, and he came out to me, he's like, "You can come in, but don't go near him today because he's got the ump today." And that was it for me with Alex Guinness. I hated him from that moment on forever, ever, ever. And I remember, no, I'm not going to go into when I heard him when he passed away, and I wasn't sad at all. But he destroyed me. I was driving along the A316, and I'm like, yes, he's dead at last. But I don't know why it's so he actually destroyed me. Oh my God, the worst. But saying that, you go against that kind of shit, and then when you meet Steven Spielberg and he shouts at you like, "You're nothing compared to Alex Guinness, nothing. You can't break me. I've been broken already."
So he did you a favor
in a way.
He did you a favor.
In a way, if you look deep enough,
Made you stronger.
Look deep enough and dig a little bit,
just like Obi-Wan Kenobi would.
He was teaching me a lesson. Strike me down, and I will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. That's what he was doing to me, but I couldn't see it at the time. He's lucky I didn't have a fucking lightsaber, because I would have cut the guy in half when he walked out for lunch.
Very good. So, I mean, we move on to Jedi, and that was actually the film that we had talked a bunch about. And actually, you showed me that great picture, which we'll try to find it. If it's okay, we can post it on our little social feed. You sent me this great picture of you and Howard Gazanjian talking to R2D2, yeah. And it was very young Mike Dawson.
That was indeed,
and,
yeah.
That was like one of the first things that you showed me off that film. You gave me that great Revenge of the Jedi patch, which I still have in a frame in my office. But as Star Wars kind of went along, the productions got bigger and bigger, and the gags got more and more ambitious. By the time you come around to Jedi, I mean, it's a world of difference from Superman. I'm sure, right? What are the kind of things that are being innovated and going on that movie?
Well, I think obviously the visual effects are streaks ahead by now. They're like they're streaks ahead, and also creature effects. Creature effects have come on massively, like the foams that they've developed to do like Jabba and all that kind of stuff, and they were casting that and they were making that for real. Because obviously now they would do it digitally, but they were making them for real. There was people inside actually working it, like 3 or 4 people inside making it, working it, and there even guys in there smoking cigars and like blowing smoke at us. So when he's smoking his hubbly bubbly pipe, it was a guy inside smoking. You wouldn't do that now. You couldn't do it. It's health and safety. You wouldn't be able to do it. But the foams, and they would bake it was all new. It was all kind of new. So they had big ovens, and they would bake and make all the creatures for real and all that kind of stuff. All never did that before. So that was crazy. That was groundbreaking at the time. I remember um, doing that, and all that big shot in, when they were down in the dungeon where or not dungeon, where his stronghold was, and they would use smokes, like they would use bee puffer smoke to light it, like this stuff that you charcoal and incense, basically what you would burn in a church, basically hot charcoal, and it's basically tree sap on top, and you puff it and but it looks beautiful. And you can't use that now. You'd have to use a water-based stuff, and that's a good thing, but a bad thing, because it does look better. It looks stunningly eclastic, like a church, and it adds that bluey kind of hint. You don't get that anymore. It's so generic now. Atmos, I think. Shame, but better for people's lungs.
Yeah. And I mean, with the creature effects in Jedi, I mean, are you guys how, like with a Jabba the Hutt? I mean, where does special effects come into with your department? Where does that come into something like that?
We would just do if he was smoking, we'd do the bubbles in his pipe, and we would do the sparks when R2 zapped his little henchman creature that he had on it. We did a little spark there, and things like that, and R2-D2 had a small man inside it working it. Wasn't remote control. It had a guy in it, like doing all that shaky stuff with it. And I remember when they came round to look at R2-D2, and we were doing a show and tell, and it malfunctioned, and the head span round and round and round and round, and it just ripped all the remote control stuff out. And George Lucas was like, "Oh my god, that's amazing! I've been wanting to do this for ages, but no one could ever do it." He said, "This is great," and he walked out, and Kit's gone, "Oh my god," because he was so upper class. He's like, "Oh my god, how am I going to do this now?" And he opened it up, and all the wires had pulled out, where it all ripped out. So he had to spend a fortune trying to get this thing to do it again, and all that. But it was very much more basic. Lots of our remote control stuff. Lots of people standing off of shot, like working it with little like airplane remote controls. Really, a lot of it was that. And I remember when in the operating theatre, when the robot was operating and stuff like that, that was all remote control. There was a guy there off stuff doing all the joints and everything like that. It were just all servos, basically.
You mentioned George Lucas, and I'm going to ask this question, and you're welcome to just go no comment. But on that movie, on Jedi, there's sort of a sense in the fan community that Lucas sort of rode roughshod directing wise over Richard Marquand.
Yeah.
And I guess I was curious, like, did you have a sense of how much George was directing or not directing? It's been a lot of years. I think it's okay, but say what you're comfortable with.
Well, George was omniscient, really, wasn't he? And he could do what he wanted, really. I saw him coming onto the set and say, "Wrap it," to the ADs, and they're like, "We've got one more shot, George, to do," and he's like, "Wrap it, I'm done." And they would just pull the plug, and you'd never do that now. You just carry on until you got that one shot, and he would just come on, and that's power. And that's like, to me, that's like old producer power. When you used to get like the old studio heads that would do that, because basically that's what he probably was, one of the last studio heads, and he would come on and just like, "That's it, I'm done, just pull the plug." And so yeah, and you'd have, I don't know how you would go up against a man of that power, really, and come out in any way, shape or form ahead. So yes, I think he did have a lot of influence. I'd call it a lot of influence on it, but it was his. They can't let go. It's his thing. He can't let go, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, sometimes it becomes a little bit destructive, but he's certainly got the pedigree apart from Howard the Duck.
With you got to work with a couple of James Bonds in your career, Mike.
James Bond, yeah, I did.
You were on.
You got to do both. Are you one of the few people that worked on Never Say Never Again and the Broccoli movies? Because I assume those were very separate.
Yeah, they
right?
were super separate. Yeah, I did Never Say Never Again, which is obviously a spin-off with Sean Connery, and then I did a View to a Kill. So yeah, I did that. So
View to a Kill.
Yeah, View to a Kill. Yeah, I did both. Totally different movies, because obviously one was with Sean Connery and one was with Roger Moore. Totally different ball game. I like the Sean Connery one better, I think. Although I'm not sure about the movie itself, but I like the grittiness of it. I thought he was a better Bond.
Sure, yeah. The Bond films, I mean, at the time and now, are known for these giant practical effects sequences. I mean, you must have been doing. I mean, they must have asked crazy things of you for both of those movies, I imagine, right? And you're again pushing the envelope and pushing the limits. I mean, what kind of stuff stands out from you for what your department did on those films?
Well, the A View to a Kill was obviously all about with all the Airbus and all that kind of stuff, the big dirigible and that kind of stuff we did, and a lot of model shots. And they did a lot of model shots as well. They did. And special effects would do a lot of the models for this kind of stuff as well. They do a lot of the scale stuff and shoot that, which probably wouldn't get into now. You wouldn't do it, but at that point you would do it. And a view to Never Say Never Again was pretty much, there wasn't anything amazingly spectacular on that. It was purely action, cars and fights. I thought it was pretty easy from our point of view. A View to a Kill was a bit more tricky. Obviously, you've got big stars in there as well. You had Grace Jones, who was obviously not the easiest person to work with, but still amazing. But to me, they weren't like. If I'm being perfectly honest, going on to them after Raiders and Temple of Doom, and they were, to me, a little bit boring, because they weren't. I think the others were far more demanding of us, from my point of view, far more demanding, and they were always like a bit more spectacular. I always thought that the others were a bit more safe for me, from my point of view. But now, obviously, they're bigger now, obviously, and bigger and better. But because I don't think, Never Say Never Again, you couldn't compare that to Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. I don't think, anyway.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, let's.
I prefer that genre.
Yeah. Yeah, the genre. I mean, I was going to say, let's talk Temple of Doom. That's 1984. So Raiders is 81. Temple of Doom is a sequel to a kind of lower budget film, a B film that was made on sort of A movie ambitions, but it becomes this huge worldwide smash hit. Going into Temple of Doom, did it feel like a continuation of Raiders, or did it feel suddenly like the sandbox was much bigger and you were on this, you were in this kind of sort of, lack of a better word, big blockbuster Hollywood movie the way you weren't with Raiders, or because it was kind of, it's Harrison and Spielberg again and Lucas, did it just feel like it's a sequel, it's it's 20% bigger than the last one?
I think a little bit.
What was the feeling going into that?
I think a little bit of all of that, because obviously we knew how big Raiders was, and we knew that it was an extension of that, and the sets were big, and the sequences were big. The obviously the bridge being cut in Sri Lanka and all that kind of stuff, and the temple itself when the guy gets lowered into the flames and all that kind of stuff. It was big, and we always knew it would be.
Right.
And it was a bit more exotic. I think they spent a bit more money on it, and Kate Capshaw was there. It was Kate Capshaw, wasn't it? It was became Stephen's partner and stuff like that. So it was very kind of it was bigger, and it was just as fun. It was just as crazy fun, but we knew that we knew that was the thing to work on. That was the film of the year, to work on. So it had that kudos attached to it by that time, definitely. It went, that was Last Crusade. Then obviously I did Roger Rabbit before Last Crusade, but that was one after the other. God, I don't know. I did all that. I'm just looking at my own CV and I'm thinking, how did I do that without actually dying? Crazy. They were so hard. They were so hard, those films.
Roger Rabbit seems like the combination of special effects, and then some of it's going to be turned into a cartoon, but some of it isn't.
Yeah,
and the
crazy
coordination between the different departments, the prop department, you guys, whatever, that just seems like a headache, like how you kept it all straight. I mean,
and it was a crazy film. I actually love working on it. I think Bob Zemeckis, great director for me, and obviously it was Bob Hoskins and it was there was a lot of stuff going on. They had all the cutouts, so they had all the foam models of Roger and all that kind of stuff. So you could see this silly little rabbit, and you think, what the fuck's this going to be about? This is going to be crazy. I mean, we made some really interesting effects on it, but I'm thinking this is going to be absolute rubbish. And wow, I was so blown away when I saw that, because it was like, wow. And it was like, you're making cartoons sexy and dark and all that kind of stuff. And the judge was like, oh my God, it was great. So good. So good. And it was unique. I'm proud of that one. Very much so. Very much.
I'm sure you were heavily, I mean, special effects must have been heavily intertwined with a lot of those gags where like the animated character is grabbing somebody or holding a gun or whatever. That must have been right. All that, if there's armatures and things that are being painted over that we're not seeing, I mean, that must have been your world, right?
Yeah, definitely. We were making rigs to like pick things up, move things, break things, chop things up, all that kind of open doors, all that kind of stuff. It was all it was just all automation, so there's nothing there, but we were automated. It's like there was something there. But it's tricky, like all the smashing plates and the chopping ups and the keyboards going all over the place and all that kind of stuff. It was crazy, but it was great. It was such, and obviously the dip, when we did the dip at the end, and I think I've mentioned this on other people, when we were like fluorescein, dyeing the Thames with fluorescein and all that kind of stuff, and we made all those rollers to sweep up that big sweeper truck that we made. So that was great fun, but and we had no idea what we were doing really. But it was so, because I read the script, and you couldn't actually see in your mind's eye how it's going to go. But now, having done it, where Bob Zemeckis was going, because he loves that shit, doesn't he? He loves that cartoon world, and he's done it before, and that, look where he's gone with it, with Polar Express, and then obviously
Pushing the
Scrooge,
envelope.
and he loves all that kind of stuff. So, and I would say we were probably at their early days. So, I'm really glad we were.
Was it your job, I guess, for like, if a cartoon character, grabbed Bob Hoskins and, like, I don't know, grabbed him by the collar or something, or knocked his hat off, and there's nobody there, are you guys like I don't know. Is that your realm to like make the hat come off his head or things like
Some of
that,
it
or
is,
you know what I mean, or
yeah.
like we need a collar that grabs, or was that more green screen replacement?
There was a bit of both actually. So obviously you'd have your green screen replacements, and then obviously you could have. It's easier just to put a monofilament on a hat and pull it off, or we had made these little machines that would with little
just pull
suckers that
off.
would pick things up, and they would pick it up and throw the plates like when all the plates were going, all that. We made this like it's almost like a robotic arm, really, like a early Kuka arm, if you will. You know what I mean? So we made all that kind of stuff, and the cars when they were driving the cars and things like that. So we made lots of rigs. It was quite a complicated film to work on. Um, in all honesty, but it wasn't straightforward, but like you say, there was lots of little things to do all the time, lots of little things to do all the time.
And then that brings us around to Last Crusade, the final trilogy. You were, Mike, you told me you were one of the few, the 30 or 40, do you even know the
No,
exact number of people
I don't.
that got the Around the World, that did the
The
entire
world tour.
trilogy? I mean, I think it was 30 some people based on
Yeah,
the world tour,
yeah,
right?
I did.
The crew that had worked on all three Indiana Jones films.
Yeah, I did. I got the jacket, and I was the only special effects man to get the jacket, because George Gibbs did two supervised two, and Kit West did one. So
Wow.
I was the only special effects man to get a jacket, which is strange, really. But
Wow.
now you've got it.
I do. Thank you. I wasn't going to say that, but now that you have, thank you, Mike.
You do. So,
I love that jacket.
oh, okay. Sorry. Um, yeah, I was the only one to get one.
No, I wasn't going to give away your stuff.
There was a little a note in the pocket saying thank you from Stephen, and I can't find it. I don't know what I did with it. You don't when you're young and you get these things, you just put them in. You just think, oh, what the hell? Now, God, I wish I hadn't, but it did have a little handwritten thing from Stephen in it.
Yeah.
So Christ, I would love that.
It's amazing. Yeah. And there were very few of those in existence. So I was very honored. Thank you.
Pleasure.
That movie was of the trilogy was huge. There were so many gags and effects on that film. But you got the honor of being part of the world tour. And you also had the honor of being yelled at by another British legend. So can you tell us that story?
God, you're bringing them up today, aren't you? That was what Sean Connery you're talking about when we were doing. It was inside the tank. The tank was an amazing piece of engineering, because we built that tank from scratch. That World War One tank, and we built that, and that was before they built one on Warhorse, because we built another one on Warhorse. But we were inside that tank, and it was my unenviable job to actually put a little bit of smoke in there. And at the time we were using oil and gas, so it was hot. It was like a hot smoke. It was different. Not it wasn't water based as it is now. So I was in there like doing. It's always smoke, isn't it? It gets me bollockins. And just made that connection. And he just turned around and he's like, I'm not going to do a Scottish accent because I'll sound ridiculous. But he said in a thick Scottish accent, because he could go Scottish when he got annoyed. If you put that anywhere near me again, I'll shove it up your ass. And I actually, I just lost it, and I was so scared at the time, because it was almost like there's like Sean Connery, there's a Bond, he's going to kill me. Do you know what I mean? 007's going to kill me, and I just and ran out, and but he was all right. He calmed down afterwards, but he did mean it at the time. I think he did actually mean it, and I think he would have done it. I think he would have rammed it up my ass, and hot at the time. He would have let it cool down. I think he would have just gone for it. So it was scary.
Did he say?
I think he was acting.
Did he say, "Hey, Alec Guinness told me about you"? Like Alec Guinness told me all about you.
Alex,
get away from me. Like did he mention that?
Yeah, on his deathbed, Alex said, "You're a fucking arsehole with smoke. So keep that thing away from me, or I'll do it, and I'll do something that Alex couldn't do because he was too old." So You're going to get your comeuppance at last.
Very good. So Mike, we also on this film, because this is sort of we're sort of rounding this out, but this is how you and I kind of came together, other than working on the same show. I came to you in the very early days of knowing you with pictures of my Holy Grail cup from The Last Crusade, saying, "Hey, I always assumed this was a special effects cup because there's this little ball bearing rig in the bottom of it. Can you tell me that?" You said, "Actually, I built that thing."
Yeah,
and,
we did.
and
Yeah,
it was for when it rolled in the temple. So that was amazing, just because for years we had puzzled over what that thing was. And, we always assumed it was real because it was one of those things where it's just, this is too weird not to be real. But we just all wondered that, what was it? What was the story? And you were able to authenticate it, and then told the story about how it was built.
yeah. It was a little right angle, just run it along. Is it when I told you that, was it, when and it just runs along as all the floor cracks and everything, like it just runs along the crack without actually going down into the abyss. So when you hear things like that, like when you get told that, is it like a relief that you've actually at last, like almost like found the holy grail yourself, kind of thing, really?
Yeah, completely, because
often pondered as to what that little bearing was.
So few of us actually get the benefit. I mean, I work in the business, and I get to meet legends such as yourself, and you get to ask those questions. There's a lot of collectors or just movie fans that work at a hedge fund or whatever, and don't get that kind of access. So no, and look, I love this stuff, but I love this and the telling of tales and the history of it, just as much as actually collecting the stuff. So I mean, that was, I ran home and I called Dave up and told him that story when you told me that a couple of years ago, because it was just, I'd had it probably for 10 years at that point.
We were all wondering, what is it? Why is it there?
What is that little ball bearing?
It finally made sense. Yeah.
What is that little? Yeah. Do you remember when I told you about the bullwhip with a company in London called Swain, Adeney and Briggs that made the bullwhip for Indiana Jones, and they wove it around.
You did,
yeah.
You
tube.
Should go ahead. You should tell the story.
Well, I can't. Don't actually. You just asked me about who made the whips, and I said that it was a company in Piccadilly, who makes hunting attire and things like that, and they were called Swain, Adeney and Briggs. And I actually went to them and asked them to make bullwhips. And weave them around a PTFE liner. So you've got a PTFE tube in the middle of it, so that when Harrison or Indy would swing across something, we could actually put a cable down the center of it, so that he could actually hold on to it. So his hand would be like holding onto it, or the stuntman would, and he could swing over and swing from piece to piece, and not obviously break, because probably a bullwhip you wouldn't be able to do that. But I think they made 3 or 4 of them anyway. I think did you ring them, Ryan, and ask them?
I did. I think
they did.
They sort of obliquely acknowledged having worked on the film, and then said they didn't have anything. But I actually saw, we have seen, there's one around that's in a private collection somewhere now, but it's one of the Kit West whips from Raiders, the one that when Indy gets dragged behind the truck,
that's it.
And it had the steel. So we've seen it with the steel cable running through, and it's actually funny because the pommel of the whip had come off, and either it was taken off for the sequence, or it had been dragged off by the truck. So you could see all of the frayed leather and where the steel cable was sticking out. So it was still in there. And there was supposed to be another one around somewhere, but it never turned up. But those are, to me, those are the coolest. Those are the whips to have.
Yeah, for sure.
That says
for sure
use.
But the others didn't really come off his hip.
Mike, I was just curious, before Ryan, were you aware that people were collecting this stuff, or was Ryan the first time you kind of went, oh, I see, there are people out there that are like the things that we used to throw in the garbage, like they're paying money for them? Like, did you know that there was this world?
I didn't know that. I knew there were crazy people out there, but I didn't know how crazy they were. And basically, it was like that's a compliment. Um, it was like I was like I think it was my first week into season one, and Ryan's assistant rang me up, and he's like, "Oh, Ryan's just checked you out on IMDb, and he wants to talk to you about your shit because he's like, wow, he's so impressed by your CV, and he's like, all the things that he loves is you've worked on." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" Because to me, it's like nothing. It's the kind of, and I've had a lot of that kind of stuff. I have actually had things, and I haven't got them anymore. I wish I did. You know what I mean? I had the crystals from Superman. My dad gave them to me at the end. You know, the green, and all that kind of stuff. And I had loads of stuff, and I just never really cherished it. And I wish I had. But and then obviously Lonnie is what as well. I met Lonnie on season 2, and he's as engaged as anyone else, I think, in all this.
One of our directors.
Yeah, one of our directors. Yeah, so he's does he collect as well? Lonnie does he? He just likes to watch
not
the films.
Really. I mean, like, yeah, and photographs and things like that. He has this. I'm insanely jealous of it. He has this great photograph from. He's this whole collection of director photographs, like his favorite directors working on set. So it's like Spielberg and the Jaws of Jaws and whatever. But he got this. He tracked down this photograph, and there was some story behind it. I should ask him so I can give a more detailed description. But it's basically an unpublished photograph of the set from Rear Window.
Wow.
That he managed to find and get and make this huge blown up print of. So it's a shot of the rear of the, basically looking out Jimmy Stewart's window out into the back lot, and you see that, and it's up in his office. It's just it's so great. It's one of the greatest photos I've ever seen. But yeah, he's into it, and he loves this stuff and asks me about the collection all the time. He's one of us, as they would say. But yes, one of our directors on season 2.
Yeah, no. I gave him a load of pictures from Raiders when we did Raiders. I've got that. Yeah, did you see the album that I showed him? And there were some pictures of Stephen on a camera crane.
No, I didn't. I now need to see this.
No, I gave him a lot. I gave him a few of those. So
oh, fantastic.
Oh, that's really cool.
Because you could take pictures on sets then.
Lonnie smartly and kindly ran this film series over the course of shooting. There's a really nice screening room, obviously, at Leavesden. So once a month through all of prep and shooting, Lonnie would host the screening of a film, and he ran this. He did this poll with the crew, like, what do you want to see? And then he would try to anybody that had worked on the film, if it was made in the UK, he would have them come and speak. So Mike went to speak at Raiders. He did Dark Knight, which our producer had produced, so he had him come and kind of do a live commentary through it. But once a month there was one of these screenings at the studio, so it's just good fun kind of team building.
Yeah, it was good
for the show.
The last show,
Mike, this has been fantastic.
No, my pleasure.
This was amazing.
Thank you for taking us on a trip down your memory lane.
Yeah, well, thank you for dragging me down there as well. I feel incredibly old now, but I'll go and
we love it.
I'll put some moisturizer on and I'll revitalize myself, and I'll go to Barbados.
It's crazy. I feel like we need to bring you back like next season and just do the latter half of your career. Okay. It's been, I mean, we barely got to the 90s.
Yeah,
It's pretty insane. Really just wonderful.
There's
just
more.
Just really amazing.
I'm there. I'm there for you guys. Whatever you want to talk about, I'm there. But thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope I've entertained you to a degree with my numerous stories of being thrown off sets and of being shouted at and sworn at by. I can say that in all honesty, I've been sworn at by the most important people.
I mean, I can't wait to hear how many sets.
Legends.
Yeah, I won't tell you who else has called me a bastard. Fuck off.
I mean, imagine in the 90s and 2000s the people that yelled at you. I can't wait. Yeah.
It's coming up. Thank you so much, guys. Have a lovely day or night or wherever you are, and I'll see you soon. God bless.
Well, Mike, thank you. That was absolutely incredible. Please, everyone, keep following us on the podcast, the YouTube channel. We're on the social medias at Props Podcast. You can write us at Ryan.
Dreams are made of podcast@gmail.com. And as always, click, love, subscribe, tell a friend,
Yes.
and join us next week here on The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of.
See you soon.